Have you ever noticed how the people who hurt you the most always seem to know exactly where to strike? As if they've memorized your deepest insecurities. The silence, the rejection, the backhanded words, they don't just sting. They echo. Not because they're powerful, but because something inside you still believes them. And the worst part? You keep pretending it doesn't matter, smiling like it didn't cut, nodding like it didn't shake your soul. But at 2 a.m., your mind replays every word, every look, every silence that said more than shouting ever could. You wonder, why do I keep letting this destroy me? Here's the truth: what breaks you isn't out there. It's what you've buried so deep, you've forgotten it's still alive. And until you face it, they will always have that power. But not after today. Stay with me. Because what you're about to hear will flip the entire story you've been telling yourself. And for the first time, you'll realize they can't break you anymore. You've been taught your whole life to fear pain, to run from it, to silence it. But no one ever told you that pain doesn't leave just because you pretend it's not there. No one ever warned you that the more you bury it, the deeper it claws its way into everything you do. And so you live your life constantly on edge, reacting to people's words as if they hold the key to your worth. You overanalyze every silence. You walk into every room wondering who might secretly not like you, who might leave, who might say something that confirms what you already fear about yourself. That you're not enough, that you're too much, that something about you is broken and no one's telling you. But here's what no one ever says: none of those external moments are the problem, not the comment, not the betrayal, not the silence. The real problem is how loud they sound inside you. And that volume, that's coming from a place deep inside you that was never healed. You see, we all carry stories we never finished, wounds we never named. Some came from childhood, when someone made you feel invisible or like your feelings didn't matter. Some came from betrayal, when you gave your heart away and it was dropped like it was nothing. Others came from trying to be strong for so long that you forgot what it feels like to be honest with yourself. And so when someone criticizes you today, you don't just hear their voice. You hear every voice that ever made you feel small. When someone walks away, it's not just them leaving. It's every abandonment you never grieved repeating itself like a ghost you never exorcised. That's the hidden truth. It was never about them. It was always about you. What's unhealed in you? What you've kept in the dark? Because anything unhealed becomes a target. It becomes a soft spot that the world keeps pressing, not out of cruelty, but because life has a way of bringing your pain to the surface again and again until you finally pay attention. And most people never see this. They blame the world. They call people toxic. They try to control everything outside of them. But that never works because control is an illusion, and pain doesn't obey illusions. It only responds to truth. The truth is, the reason they could hurt you over and over again is because you're still waiting for someone else to stop the bleeding. You're still hoping the world changes so you don't have to. But healing doesn't start when they apologize. It doesn't begin when they come back or when they understand how much they hurt you. Healing begins when you decide to face the wound that was already there before they even showed up. When you finally admit that it was never just this one moment, it was a pattern, a trigger, a reminder. And until you stop blaming the world for making you feel broken, you'll keep giving it the power to keep you that way. Carl Jung once said that what you resist persists. That means the more you try to avoid your pain, the more it rules you. The more you try to act like it doesn't exist, the more it controls every choice you make. That's why you keep choosing partners who don't see you. That's why you keep letting people cross your boundaries. That's why you either explode or shut down when you feel threatened. Because the wound is still open. And unhealed wounds always seek attention, even if it's through chaos. So here's what you need to understand. The pain you feel today didn't begin today. It's old, it's layered. It's deeply rooted in the stories you've told yourself for years. Stories that you are unworthy unless proven otherwise, that you need to be perfect to be loved, that being vulnerable is dangerous. And so every time someone criticizes you, it hits that script. Every time someone walks away, it confirms a belief you've carried for years. This isn't weakness. This is being human. The problem is, most people are living their lives trying to fix the mirror instead of fixing the crack inside them that keeps distorting what they see. And here's the hard truth. It doesn't matter how strong you look on the outside. If you haven't gone inward, the smallest thing will still have the power to break you. That's not because the world is cruel. It's because your pain is still waiting to be seen, not suppressed, not explained away, seen. And only when you're willing to sit with it, name it, and feel it without judgment, that's when you take the first step toward being free. Because once you truly see the root, the surface loses its power. The words that once crushed you, they stop making sense. The silence that used to feel like abandonment, it becomes just silence. The rejection, it stings, but it doesn't destroy. Because the storm isn't inside you anymore, you've faced it, you've walked through it. And the wind has nothing left to tear down. So if you're still feeling broken, it's not because you are. It's because there's a part of you still believing the old stories. And that part needs your attention more than it needs your shame. Don't look away this time. Because the only thing standing between you and the life you want isn't the world. It's the way your unhealed past keeps narrating your present. And once you change that story, they won't be able to break you anymore. Not because they won't try, but because what's whole can't be shattered. And you right now are finally ready to become whole. That's the truth most people never see. But you're not most people, you're still listening. And that means you're ready for more. Keep going. You might think that ignoring your pain is keeping you safe. That smiling through the cracks makes you stronger. That staying busy, staying productive, staying unbothered is the path to peace. But let me ask you something. How is that working out for you? How many times have you bitten your tongue when you wanted to scream? How many nights have you stayed awake, wondering why you're the one who always ends up hurt, always ends up left behind, always ends up questioning your worth after everyone else has already moved on? There's a cost to pretending everything is fine, and it's higher than you think. Every time you choose to stay silent instead of speaking your truth, you train yourself to believe your voice doesn't matter. Every time you swallow your pain, you feed a version of yourself that grows bitter, closed, and numb. And the longer you live like that, the more you start to lose the ability to feel joy, not just pain. You don't just block out sadness, you block out everything. Life becomes flat, Conversations become shallow. Relationships feel exhausting. You start living from your head, not your heart, and your soul. It gets quieter and quieter until it stops knocking altogether. That's what happens when you do nothing. You stop trusting people. You stop trusting yourself. You stop believing in the possibility that anything could feel different. You tell yourself this is just the way I am, but deep down you know better. You weren't always like this. There was a time you loved openly, laughed without overthinking, said what you meant without calculating how it would be received. But over time, pain taught you to shrink, to hide, to harden. And that version of you, the one living under layers of defense mechanisms, is not who you were born to be. It's who you became to survive. But survival has an expiration date. At some point, what once protected you begins to suffocate you. That's the cost of doing nothing. You lose time, you lose love, you lose yourself, you repeat patterns, you stay in jobs that drain you. You choose people who don't see you. You say yes when you want to scream no. You convince yourself that numb is better than broken, but it's not. Because numb is just broken in disguise. And the saddest part, most people will live their entire lives in that space. They'll never push past the discomfort of facing what's underneath. They'll never risk peeling back the armor. They'll call it strength, but it's fear. They'll call it wisdom, but it's avoidance. They'll raise children with the same silent pain, pass it down like an inheritance, and wonder why no one ever feels whole. But you don't have to be one of them. You're listening now because something in you already knows this can't go on. You're tired, not just physically. Soul tired. Tired of holding it all together. Tired of replaying conversations in your head. Tired of saying, I'm fine when you're anything but. Tired of being strong when all you really want is to be free. And here's what most people never realize. Freedom doesn't come from having nothing to lose. It comes from no longer needing to protect the things that were never real to begin with. The image, the mask, the need to be seen a certain way. All of that costs you. And the longer you hold on to it, the more you disappear behind it. The truth is, you're not being broken by life. You're being broken by the way you keep trying to protect yourself from life. There's a difference. Because life will hurt sometimes, that's unavoidable. But suffering, staying stuck in cycles that destroy you slowly, that's optional. That's what doing nothing creates, so let this be your wake-up call. Let this moment be the one you look back on and say, that was the day I stopped letting fear run my life. That was the day I chose truth over comfort, healing over pretending, wholeness over perfection. Because the cost of doing nothing isn't just pain. It's losing the chance to ever feel truly alive. And you deserve more than that. You've always deserved more. But you have to be the one to claim it. No one's coming to rescue you. That's not bad news. It's liberation. Because once you stop waiting for permission, for validation, for the perfect moment, you realize you've had the power all along. Not to avoid pain, but to face it so fully that it no longer controls you. And that's when everything starts to change. When doing something, finally, becomes the only option you can't ignore. Keep listening. The breakthrough is coming. So what actually changes it all? What's the breakthrough? The shift that takes you from being constantly hurt to becoming unshakable. It's not more strength. It's not tougher skin. It's not pretending you don't care until one day you finally believe the lie. The breakthrough begins with this one truth. You stop trying to protect yourself from pain and you start listening to it. That sounds counterintuitive, maybe even dangerous. But pain is not your enemy. Pain is a message. It's your soul tapping on the glass trying to get your attention. And the longer you ignore it, the louder it gets, not because it hates you, but because it's trying to lead you home. The real turning point is this. When you realize that pain is not here to punish you, it's here to point you to the parts of you that are still unfinished, unacknowledged, unclaimed. It's your inner life screaming for integration. The breakthrough is awareness, not abstract, philosophical awareness, but raw, present-moment recognition. It's the day you finally say, wait, that reaction I keep having, it's not because they said something awful. It's because I've never healed from that wound I've carried for years. It's when you realize that the world doesn't owe you perfect behavior to feel at peace, that your peace isn't theirs to manage, and more than that, it never was. That's the shift that flips everything upside down. You start to see that you don't need the world to stop hurting you in order to heal. You need to stop believing that its behavior defines your worth. You realize that healing isn't about fixing your emotions. It's about learning to interpret them correctly. It's not about numbing out every time you feel anxious or abandoned. It's about learning to sit with the feeling and say, this is familiar. This is mine, and it's trying to tell me something. That moment, when you stop trying to escape yourself and start listening to yourself, is when you take back your power. Most people never get there. They get stuck in the loop. They have a bad day and blame someone else. They feel anxious and run to distraction. They feel rejected and start performing harder, people-pleasing, trying to earn love. They live their whole lives reacting to the echoes of their past. But the moment you realize that you are not your reaction, that there is a deeper witness within you who can pause, observe, and respond, that's the beginning of freedom. It's not dramatic. It doesn't feel magical, but it's real. And it's yours. That's the kind of awareness Jung talked about. Not intellectual enlightenment, but the raw honesty of looking at your emotional triggers and saying, I know where this comes from, I see it now. And that seeing, that is the power. When you can name what's happening, it no longer owns you. The next time someone ignores you and your stomach drops, you don't spiral. You ask, what does this remind me of? The next time someone criticizes you and your chest tightens, you breathe and say, this is an old wound, not a new truth. That's the shift. You go from being a slave to your emotions to being a student of them. And the more you study them, the more you reclaim the parts of yourself you abandoned. The scared child, the insecure teenager, the people-pleaser, the angry protector, all those pieces of you that you've tried to exile, they come back into the room. Not to take over, but to be heard, to be healed, to be integrated. And that's how you become whole, not by becoming someone new, but by remembering who you were before the world taught you to hide. This breakthrough isn't loud. It won't show up with fireworks, but you'll feel it the next time someone tries to break you, and you don't break. You'll feel it when someone walks away and you let them go without chasing. You'll feel it when you look in the mirror and for the first time you don't see someone who needs fixing. You see someone who's already enough. That's the real strength. Not invincibility, not perfection, just presence. Awareness, truth. And once you touch it, you'll never go back. You'll wonder how you lived so long without it. You'll feel the space open up between the world and your worth, between people's behavior and your peace. And in that space, you'll breathe. You'll build. You'll finally live. That's the breakthrough. And it belongs to you now. Stay with me. Let's break it down even further. Now that you understand the breakthrough, let's talk about why it actually works. Not just why it feels better, but why it creates real, lasting transformation that shows up in your life, in your relationships, in how you carry yourself in rooms where you used to shrink. Because here's the thing, this isn't just an emotional shift, it's a neurological one. Your brain has been conditioned for years to react a certain way. Every time someone criticized you and you spiraled into self-doubt, every time someone abandoned you and you begged them to stay, every time you felt unseen and responded by working harder, pleasing more, disappearing less, you were reinforcing neural pathways that said, I am only safe if I am accepted. I am only okay if others approve. I am only worthy if I am not hurt. That's not mindset. That's programming. And just like a computer keeps running code in the background, your subconscious keeps firing those same signals over and over every time something even remotely resembles pain. But awareness interrupts the pattern. The moment you pause and say, this isn't about what just happened, this is about what this moment reminds me of, you force your brain to slow down, you create space. That space, that pause is everything. That's where you regain control. That's where you stop reacting and start responding. It's also where your body learns a new truth. Not every emotional spike means danger. You are not dying. You are not being abandoned. You are not 12 years old again, sitting in silence, waiting for someone to love you the way you needed back then. You're here now, an adult, with tools, with language, with choice. That's the power of conscious awareness. You interrupt the trauma loop. You give yourself a different ending, but it's not just science, it's spiritual. The moment you choose presence over panic, you send a message to your entire system. I am safe with myself. That might not sound revolutionary, but to someone who has lived their whole life outsourcing safety to other people's opinions, that changes everything. It means you no longer need to manipulate your image just to be accepted. You no longer need to shrink your needs, your truth, your boundaries just to be loved. You no longer fear rejection the same way, because you're no longer rejecting yourself. That inner alignment creates external power. You walk differently, you speak differently. People feel it without you saying a word. You don't need to prove anything because you're not performing anymore. You're present, you're rooted, and that presence is magnetic. But more than that, it's unshakable. When someone criticizes you, you don't collapse. When someone pulls away, you don't chase. When life gets heavy, you don't crumble under the weight of your own unprocessed emotion. You've trained yourself to hold space for discomfort without being swallowed by it. That's real power. That's not fake confidence. That's embodiment. And here's why it lasts, because it's not based on trying to avoid being hurt. It's based on proving to yourself that when hurt happens, you don't run anymore. You stay. You listen. You tend to your pain like it's worthy of care, because it is. And because you are, most people don't get this far. They read the books. They memorize the quotes. They repost the affirmations. but they never actually feel the shift because they don't slow down enough to practice it. They keep chasing perfection when what they need is compassion. They keep trying to control everything when what they need is curiosity. But you're doing it differently. You're not just learning how to avoid being broken. You're learning how to be whole, even when life throws its worst at you. That's how it works, moment by moment, awareness by awareness, breath by breath. Every time you choose truth over reaction, presence over panic, clarity over chaos, you become someone the world cannot shake, not because life gets easier, but because you've gotten deeper, stronger, truer. And once you've tasted that clarity, everything else feels like noise. So keep going. You're not just understanding this. You're living it now. Let's make it practical. Let's build this into your life, step by step. Let's take this from theory into practice. If you want to become someone who can't be broken by the world, then you need more than understanding. You need action. Simple, grounded, repeatable steps that rewire how you respond to pain, to people, and to yourself. Because this transformation isn't just an idea, it's a habit. And habits are built one choice at a time. So here are 5 practical steps to begin integrating this into your daily life right now. Step 1. Name the wound. Every time you feel triggered, angry, anxious, dismissed, rejected, don't just react. Pause, ask yourself, what exactly am I feeling and where have I felt this before? Write it down. Not just the current situation, but the emotion underneath it. I'm not just mad at my friend, I feel invisible again. That moment of identification is the beginning of power. It forces your mind to look inward instead of lashing outward. Step 2, make space for it. Sit with the feeling, literally, 5 minutes. No phone, no distractions, just silence and presence. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? You're not trying to fix it, rush it, or reframe it. You're just making space for it to exist without judgment. This is the opposite of how most people live. Most people run from discomfort, but you're retraining your nervous system to hold it, to say, this is safe, I am safe. Step 3, reframe the narrative. After sitting with the feeling, go back to the story you told yourself. Was it really about what just happened, or was it about something older, deeper, more familiar? Ask, is this pain new or is it familiar? Then rewrite the narrative. This person didn't reject me. They revealed something I still haven't healed. The story we tell ourselves about our pain determines how much power it has over us. Rewrite the story and you shift the power. Step 4, choose a new response. Now that you've created space and seen the old pattern, ask yourself, what would the healed version of me do right now? Not the scared version, not the angry version, the aware one. The one who knows their worth isn't on the line. That might mean walking away without explanation. It might mean speaking up when you usually stay silent. It might mean doing nothing and letting the emotion pass without reaction. The action doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be different than your default. Step 5, affirm your choice. Once you've responded from awareness, affirm it, speak it out loud. I chose presence over panic today. I chose myself today. This might sound small, but celebrating the choice is how you make it stick. It's how you build new pathways. You reinforce the truth. I am no longer living from reaction. I am living from awareness. That identity shift repeated is what becomes permanent. These 5 steps are not complicated, but they're powerful. And the reason they work is because they target the exact place where pain holds power, in the unconscious patterns we've never questioned. Most people want change, but they don't want discomfort. They want growth, but they don't want to feel the grief of letting go. That's why they stay stuck, because healing will always ask something from you. It will ask for your honesty, your patience, your presence, and most importantly, your willingness to stop blaming the world for the pain you haven't yet learned to hold. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming aware. These steps are not a cure, they are a compass. You will still feel pain. You will still have days where you fall back into old patterns. But now you'll know what's happening. You'll see it in real time. And that awareness, that presence, is what makes you unshakable. Not because life stops hurting, but because you stop breaking in the same places. So start today. Don't wait for the next trigger to test your strength. Practice now. Look back at a recent moment when you were hurt. Walk through these 5 steps. Name it, feel it, reframe it, respond from your future self, affirm your growth, and then do it again tomorrow. Day by day, this becomes who you are. And when people see the difference, they'll think you're colder, more detached, harder to reach. But the truth is, you're just no longer bleeding in front of people who don't know how to stop the wound. You've stopped needing their validation to feel whole. You've stopped auditioning for love. You've stopped explaining your boundaries. You've become someone who doesn't fear pain because you've finally learned how to listen to it. And that right there is how you stop being broken, not by closing your heart, but by owning every piece of it. Now let's make this even more real. Let me show you how this works in someone's actual life. You're about to see that everything we've talked about isn't just theory. It's lived, it's real, and it's possible for you too. Keep going. Let me tell you about someone who lived this, not just read about it or talked about it, but actually walked through it and came out the other side. Her name is Maya. She was the kind of person everyone thought was unbreakable. Put together, calm under pressure, always the one others leaned on. She worked in a high-pressure corporate job, managed teams, hit deadlines, looked flawless in meetings, and even gave talks about emotional resilience. But no one knew what happened when she went home. No one saw the nights she stared at her phone, waiting for a message that wouldn't come. No one saw how she replayed conversations from the day, wondering if she said too much or not enough. No one knew how much she questioned her own worth after every encounter, smiling in the room, unraveling in the silence. What people praised as strength was actually survival, and she was exhausted. For years, Maya thought the answer was doing more, getting better, being smarter, nicer, quieter, louder. Whatever it took to avoid being rejected, dismissed, ignored. She shaped herself into what people needed. She wore a mask so well that even she started to believe it, until the day it cracked. It wasn't dramatic, just a small comment from a colleague in a meeting. Something passive-aggressive, something that touched an old bruise. But that night she broke. She cried harder than she had in years, not just from what was said, but from the weight of carrying everything for so long. That was the moment she realized the pain wasn't about the comment, it wasn't about work. It was about every time she had felt small and tried to prove herself instead of listening to what that smallness was really asking for. So she did something radical. She stopped pretending. For the first time, she let herself look at the pain directly. She sat down with a notebook and wrote out every moment she could remember when she had felt dismissed, overlooked, forgotten. She didn't try to change the story. She just let it spill out. Then she looked for the patterns. And they were everywhere, not just in her job, but in her childhood, her friendships, her relationships. She started to see how she had been living in reaction, trying to earn her right to exist. And the awareness stung. It felt like shame at first, but then something shifted. She realized that the pain wasn't something to run from. It was her younger self, still waiting to be heard. From that day, Maya began practicing the same 5 steps you heard earlier. Slowly, imperfectly. Some days she forgot, other days she resisted, but she kept returning to the work. She started noticing her triggers not as failures, but as teachers. When someone made a sharp comment, she didn't spiral, she paused. She asked herself, what part of me is reacting right now? She gave that part space. Sometimes it meant journaling. Sometimes it meant crying. Sometimes it just meant placing a hand over her chest and saying, I see you. And then came the turning point. Someone she deeply cared about pulled away without explanation. The old Maya would have chased them, begged for clarity, twisted herself into knots trying to fix what she didn't even understand. But this time, she let them go, not out of coldness but out of clarity. She knew that their silence didn't mean she was unlovable. It meant she wasn't meant to keep performing for connection, and she didn't lose herself. That night she cried, but she didn't spiral, she didn't blame, she didn't collapse. She simply felt. She held space for herself in a way no one else ever had. And for the first time in her life, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. That's when she knew she had changed, not because life got easier, not because people stopped hurting her, but because their words, their absence, their actions, none of it could find the old open wounds anymore. She had finally stopped living as a mirror of other people's behavior. She had become her own reflection, whole, integrated, awake. And here's the part that matters most for you. Maya isn't special. She wasn't born with some rare mental strength. She just got tired of suffering in silence. She got honest. She got curious. She stopped trying to be the person everyone admired and started becoming the person she needed when she was at her lowest. That's possible for you too. You don't need a breakdown to start. You don't need anyone else to validate your pain. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to choose something different today. Choose to see your triggers as messengers, not enemies. Choose to slow down instead of react. Choose to make space, even if it's just 5 minutes, for the part of you that's still waiting to be heard. Real people heal. And healing isn't becoming someone else. It's coming home to yourself. Maya didn't become untouchable by building more walls. She became untouchable by embracing every part of herself she once tried to hide. And you can too. Keep going. The most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves when we're afraid to feel. So in the next part, we'll talk about what to avoid, what traps keep people stuck, and how to walk around them instead of falling in again. You're ready for that now? Let's go deeper. Most people don't fail to grow because they're weak. They fail because they fall into traps disguised as strength. If you've ever tried to heal before and felt like you were getting nowhere, it's probably because no one warned you about these traps, subtle patterns that feel safe, familiar, even productive, but actually keep you stuck. If you want to truly become someone they can't break, you need to know what to avoid. Because the enemy of transformation isn't always pain. Sometimes it's comfort. Sometimes it's pretending. The first trap is emotional suppression dressed as being strong. You've heard it, maybe you've said it. I don't let things get to me. It's whatever. I'm over it. But you're not, you're bleeding internally and calling it healing. And that kind of suppression doesn't make you resilient, it makes you disconnected. From others, from reality, from yourself. You stop trusting your feelings, you stop noticing your needs, you wear a calm face while your chest is full of fire. And you think, if I can just hold it in long enough, maybe it'll disappear. But pain doesn't disappear. It just burrows deeper, waiting to explode in ways you can't control. Suppressing your pain might make you look composed, but it robs you of the opportunity to grow. True strength is not in hiding emotion. It's in honoring it. The second trap is over-identifying with your pain. This one is sneakier. It sounds like self-awareness, but it's actually self-sabotage. You get so familiar with your trauma that it becomes part of your identity. You say things like, I always attract the wrong people. I just have trust issues. I've been through too much to change now. And without realizing it, you start living as if your pain is your personality. It's not. It's an experience. A part of your story, not the definition of who you are. The moment you make it your identity, you stop trying to change it. You think this is just who I am now. But no, this is who you've learned to be in response to pain. Who you truly are is underneath that waiting. The third trap is spiritual bypassing, using wisdom, knowledge, or self-help language to avoid doing the real work. You meditate but never feel. You journal but never look at what's raw. You talk about healing but avoid the messy conversations, the confrontations, the moments where you need to say, "This hurt me." It's easy to hide behind affirmations and productivity. It's easy to read the books and watch the videos and still live a life completely disconnected from your own emotions. Information without integration is just another layer of avoidance, and the world will praise you for it. They'll call you smart, evolved, enlightened. But inside, you'll still feel hollow, because healing isn't what you know, it's what you live. The fourth trap is perfectionism. You think healing means you'll never be triggered again. That once you figure it out, the pain will vanish forever. So every time you feel angry, jealous, anxious, you shame yourself. You think, I should be past this. You hide it, push it down, perform instead, but healing is not linear. It's not about being unbothered all the time. It's about responding differently when the same triggers show up. It's about awareness, not immunity. And every time you judge yourself for being human, you reinforce the very shame you're trying to escape. Growth doesn't mean you don't fall. It means you catch yourself faster with more compassion. And the final trap is waiting for closure from someone else. Waiting for the apology, the explanation, the validation. You think if they would just understand what they did, I could finally move on. But here's the harsh truth. They might never understand. They might never say sorry. They might not be capable of giving you what you need. And if your healing depends on them, then your freedom is still in their hands. That's not power. That's bondage. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. From deciding to release the story even if it's unresolved. From writing your own ending. From saying, they may never fix it, but I won't let that keep breaking me. These traps are common, they're human, and you've probably fallen into one or more of them. That's okay. Awareness is the beginning of change. But now that you see them, you have a choice. You can keep playing strong, smart, perfect, spiritual, or you can be real. You can face your pain instead of packaging it. You can feel instead of fake. You can choose growth over performance. So here's how you avoid these traps. Stay honest. If something hurts, say so to yourself if no one else. Stay curious. If you react, pause and ask why. Stay grounded. Healing is not a finish line, it's a rhythm, a practice, a returning. And most of all, stay committed to truth over image, to self over story, to freedom over approval. That's how you avoid the cycle. That's how you stop being controlled by pain that was never fully yours to carry. You start releasing the need to look okay and start building a life that actually is. You stop measuring growth by how well you hide it and start measuring it by how deeply you feel and still stay rooted. In the next part, we'll talk about what to do now. Not next year, not when life calms down, but today. We'll lay out the next step that turns awareness into action. Your moment to reclaim your power fully. You've made it this far, don't stop now. So now what? You've heard the truth. You've seen the patterns. You've faced the discomfort. But awareness without action changes nothing. This is the moment where you decide what to do with everything you now know, because you can't unhear it. You can't unknow it. And once you've seen how much power you've given away to other people's opinions, to your past, to your fear of being hurt, you can't keep living the same way. Something in you already knows that. That's why you're still here. Here's what I want you to remember. Change doesn't start with a massive transformation. It starts with a small decision, one moment of courage, one act of truth. So here's the call to action. Starting tomorrow, do one thing differently. Not 10, not everything, just one. Choose one moment to pause before reacting. Choose one time to name what you feel instead of denying it. Choose one person to set a boundary with. Choose one habit to stop running to when things get hard. That's it. Because real transformation doesn't happen in grand gestures. It happens in the quiet moments where you decide not to betray yourself again. So here's your practice for tomorrow. When something happens that stirs your emotions, when someone triggers you, when you feel unseen, unheard, not enough, pause, just pause, close your eyes, take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Then ask, where have I felt this before? And finally, what does this part of me need from me, not from them? It might need compassion. It might need permission to cry. It might need to be reminded that it's safe now. Give it that, even if just for 30 seconds. That one moment repeated daily is what builds unshakable power. Don't underestimate the power of starting small. It's not about how fast you go. It's about who you're becoming with every choice. Every time you choose to feel instead of flee, to observe instead of explode, to stay with yourself instead of abandon yourself again, you're building a new life. A life that no one can take from you. A peace that isn't dependent on who stays or who leaves. A strength that doesn't come from pretending, but from knowing. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a willingness to begin. And you've already done that. The fact that you're still listening means you're already on the path. You're not waiting for someone to save you. You're reclaiming yourself. Piece by piece, breath by breath, you're choosing awareness over illusion. Depth over distraction, truth over performance. And those choices, they compound. One day you'll look back and realize you didn't just survive your pain, you used it. You used it to rebuild, to reconnect, to return home to yourself. So let this be the line in the sand. The moment you stop saying someday and start saying now. The moment you stop hoping for a breakthrough and start becoming it, you are not broken, you're becoming, you are not lost, you're awakening. And the world may not change overnight. But you've already started. In the next part, we'll close this chapter together with a reflection you'll carry with you long after this episode ends. Something to anchor you, to ground you, to remind you every time you forget that you've already stepped into your power. And from here on out, they can't break you anymore, because you're no longer breaking yourself. Let's finish this. There's something powerful about a person who knows who they are beneath the noise, beneath the image, the approval, the expectations. A person who has sat in silence with their pain long enough to hear what it was really trying to say. That person becomes unshakable, not because nothing touches them, but because they no longer collapse when it does. And that's who you're becoming now. You've walked through this journey not by running from your wounds, but by facing them. You've seen that strength doesn't come from hiding, but from integrating the messy, raw, complicated truth of who you are. And now you carry something the world can't take from you. Not a mask, not an identity built on performance, but an anchor, a presence, a knowing. So before we part, let me leave you with this. Imagine your soul as a deep ocean. The storms come, the surface churns, waves crash hard, but down below it's still, quiet, untouched. That's where your truth lives. That's where your clarity waits. And every time you pause instead of react, every time you honor what you feel without judging it, every time you choose to stay with yourself when it would be easier to numb or run, you dive deeper. You return home, the world will still try to hit you, people will still misunderstand you, some will leave, others will disappoint you. But here, the difference now, they won't find the same places to break you. Because those wounds are no longer wide open. You've stitched them together with truth, with presence, with the kind of self-respect that doesn't shout, doesn't beg, doesn't perform, it simply is. And that kind of quiet power, it's unshakable. So I leave you with one question, one image to carry with you into the rest of your life. When the world gets loud again, when someone's words cut a little too close, when you feel that old familiar ache rise to the surface, don't run. Don't collapse, don't shrink. Instead, ask yourself, am I standing on the shore of who I used to be, or am I ready to dive into the depth of who I really am? Because down there, in that deep, still water, they can't touch you. They can't define you, they can't break you. And you finally remember you never needed to be untouchable. You just needed to come home. You're already there. Keep going.